Great. Okay.
Okay, everyone. I want to welcome you to our continuing series on eco-friendly landscaping. This week's guests are longtime friends of mine. We met at many different trade shows and had all kinds of good conversations. And last week we had a very scientific speaker who did a great job talking about disease and turf and everything. Jim and Basia have a different focus, and I would just say that they're more spiritual, whether they connect with the trees and work with the trees, helping themselves heal themselves. So, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Thank you both for coming tonight.
Thank you, Barry. Thanks for having us. We really appreciate it. And we always look forward to getting on seminars with you and work with you. And I loved your seminar series. They're very, very insightful and very thoughtful and have a lot of good information. And I really like your whole seminar series. And go ahead, Basia.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for inviting us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So yeah, just to let you know, this is not our home. We're in a hotel because we're on a work trip right now. We're actually in West Virginia. We've just completed the Blue Ridge Parkway, all about helping the trees. It's all for helping the trees. So you ready to start?
Ready to start.
Okay, then I'm going to share the screen. And so the name of our talk today is how to get your trees out of food debt in climate extremes. And we want to announce that we're adding an optional guided visualization exercise after the Q&A. So if you want to stay, we'll be doing, I'll be leading a guided visualization exercise.
And it'll be obvious what that's all about by the end of the talk.
Yeah.
Okay. And like I said, it's optional. It'll be after the Q&A. But one thing you have to know about Basia and I is we are tree lovers. Okay. And this is home tree out in big giant sequoia out in California. And we call it home tree. It's 2000. It reminds me all the time. I ask it how old it is. Reminds me I'm 2004 years old. Thank you very much. People say it's about 2000 years old. It says I'm 2004. I'll have you know. And it's a big, gorgeous tree, just a gorgeous tree. And I use the name the Tree Whisperer. Barry and we used to do a lot of meetings together, a lot of shows together. And Barry was the one who actually came up with this name. He said, "Gee, why don't you just call yourself the Tree Whisperer? That's what you do." And so I do. I call myself the Tree Whisperer. And this is me I was on a golf course in New Jersey here. This is back several years ago. And I had my hands on the tree, and the golf course manager was with me. He had me working on some trees, and it was the groundskeeper, the grounds manager who had me working on the trees. And the golf course manager came by and said, "Well, what's that guy doing with his hands on the trees?" And the groundskeeper said to him, he says, "You heard of the dog whisperer, right?" And the manager said, "Yeah." Says, "You heard of the horse whisperer, right?" The manager says, "Yeah." Says, "Well, you're looking at the tree whisperer." So that's how the name is kind of stuck. But what I do is I work with the energy of trees. I find out what parts and systems are not operating inside of the tree, and I get those back reconnected again and get those operating again. And I always like this saying by Albert Einstein, because that's what I do. I work with the energy of trees. It's concerning matter. We have been all wrong. What we have called matter is really energy, whose vibration has been lowered as to be perceivable to the senses. There is no matter. There's only light and sound. And that's the energy. And I'll tell you, I've had some real experiences with working with this energy, and that's what my work is all about. And so you'll get more ideas about that as we go on tonight. Go ahead. So, we have lots of problems on Earth. We have exploitation, ecological damage, pollution, climate extremes, big one right now, especially those that affect trees. Tree decline, species failure, But climate extremes are coming worse and worse and worse. And I like what Albert Einstein says about this too. We can't solve the problems. We can't solve problems using the same kind of thinking we used when we created those problems, So it takes a little different type of thinking. So what we ask you to do tonight is to step out of the box a little bit. Okay, step out of your old paradigm. And I'm not telling you to forget about your old paradigm. I'm telling you to kind of open it up a little bit. Okay, step out of it a little bit. You don't have to abandon it completely, but just kind of open it up a little bit. And what this is stepping out of the box of a new model for tree care. It's using your knowledge to ask the trees what is going on for them from the inside out. Okay, what do they need? Okay, it's coming from the tree's point of view, not the human's point of view. It's respecting nature's wisdom about itself. It's asking the question of the trees or the beings of nature, finding out what's going on for them, using the science we know to ask the right questions, okay, and not assuming we know what they need. Okay, I've been working on trees for 20 years, and I'm learning new every day. Okay, and what's going on and how they operate and how they connect with each other and how the parts and systems get connected. And there's a lot of information here, and we just can't kind of just get ourselves in a little box and say, oh, this is all we can do. There is a bigger picture here, and that's what we're trying to open up for you tonight, is kind of start to come from the tree's point of view, come from that and ask those questions. Go ahead, Basia. So we know there's lots of climate extremes out there right now. Drought. If all of us who lived in the Northeast last year, know we had about 2 months of no rain last year in the Northeast. All right, and then we have that followed by a rather mild winter, but with fluctuating temperatures. All right, all of those add stress to trees. Okay, and then there's a variety of other stresses too. Extreme heat. We had a lot of that on top of our drought last year. Stronger storms. Okay, winds, tornadoes, everything like that. And all those bring stress to trees. So what's stress do? Well, one of the things it does is disconnects the internal functionality of trees. And I'm talking about the inside of the tree. I'm, again, not talking about the outside. So it's broken. They get into broken feedback loops and disconnected network patterns. So let's just use this as an example there. If the tree photosynthesis, if they're not making enough food for themselves, then they can't break down that food enough, that they don't have enough food to break down and drive the circulation. So the circulation's not going to run right. If they can't circulate what food they have, then they don't have good cell division or good growth. And then it leads to just broken network patterns and broken feedback loops. So that tree isn't going to grow very well. The other thing that can happen with stress is they get compromised internal functionality. So what happens is, it's a little like people. Those veins and our arteries get blocked. Well, guess what? Same thing happens inside of trees. All right. And if that internal functionality or that circulation gets blocked, then the tree has trouble taking up. It's less water and nutrients absorbed by the roots. Then you have less food produced by the leaves, and with reduced food, you have reduced food going to the grow points. So you have these two variety of things going on here. Either the broken feedback loops or circulation is compromised, and those are two good examples of what stress does to the internal functionality of trees. So, can't trees fix themselves? Well, sometimes yes, they can, but a lot of times they can't. They get stuck. There's usually about 2 or 3, 4 or 5 things up there that are wrong, that aren't connected. And the tree just can't manage to get all those things back connected. So guess what? They just kind of sit there, and then they gradually go into decline cycle. And so that's one of the things that happens. So they get stuck. They can't manage their inner resources. They get a sequence of systems gets out of sync. Their interconnections are broken, such as that feedback loop you see there. They can't grow, and then they go into a decline cycle. And I've seen a lot of trees, over the past years, I continue to see more and more trees. And I see a lot of tops on the trees, and they don't have any leaves up top of the tree, and they are actually stressed, okay? And for one reason or another, and I'll give you a couple of ideas, it's either because these network patterns aren't connected, they're not making enough food for themselves, and or that circulation is blocked. That's really what's going on inside of those trees. So we need to repair those in those trees. Go ahead, Basia. So these broken network patterns, that, if any one of those photosynthesis, circulation, or cell division, if any one of those loops are broken, it affects the other two loops. Okay. So, and then what happens is there again, the tree can't make enough food for itself, and it gets into a loop, not enough food to drive more growth, then not enough growth to make more food. So that's what it does. It gets into a negative feedback loop. So those broken network patterns equal the negative feedback loop. And what happens is the tree can't make enough food for itself. It doesn't have enough food stored, and therefore the tree has a food deficit and starts into a decline cycle. So this can be fixed inside of trees. Trees are living beings whose internal functionality can be healed with conscious collaboration from the inside out. And we'll talk to you more about how to do this as we go on today. But it is possible to get those loops back reconnected again. And it's based on conscious collaboration, consciousness-based collaborative methods to help the tree with a path to healing. Okay, it's do this step, this step, this step, this step. And it's working collaboratively with the tree to go through those steps. And then finally, the tree just kind of takes off and just begins to go. Okay, so what we're doing is we work with the consciousness of those trees, and consciousness comes before form. Humans have a consciousness and trees have a consciousness, and it's possible for the humans to overlap with the consciousness of the trees. So what's that consciousness drive? It's their guiding light for the trees. It drives the goals, their ideal design or their blueprint. It drives their innate potentials. It drives their purposes. So goals, I want to be a big tree. Ideal design, I want to be an apple tree. I don't want to be an oak tree. Innate potentials, I want to put on apples. I don't want to put on acorns. Okay, that's what it is. And everything has a purpose. Even weeds have a purpose. And that purpose is to cover the earth. That's what a weed's purpose is. Okay, but every tree, they have a purpose. And this consciousness is that guiding light as they go along. So when the stress comes along, the consciousness is trying to guide them to get them back onto their growth pattern that they need. Okay, but again, what happens is the tree gets stuck. Go ahead. So what's the consciousness drive? It drives in the spring. It's getting the circulation of food and fluid going within all parts, systems, and functions. Summer, it's health and growth, and in the fall, it's preparation for winter, storing food and getting food into the buds. Okay, those are just some of the examples that the consciousness drives. So that brings us to this spring. Okay, and this is what I really want to talk to you about in today, and it's about the trees, and they have a food deficit right now. The trees in the Northeast went through a drought last year. We didn't have rain for about 2 or 3 months, and then, well, for 2 months for sure. And then finally, when we did get rain, it was kind of late in the season. Well, trees spent food on surviving those climate extremes last summer to survive, and then again to survive the temperature fluctuations this past winter. So why do they have this food deficit? Well, they used up that food in the climate extremes and drought to maintain at least minimal inner circulation. Trees break down food, and in that breakdown, there's an energy release, and that energy drives the circulation inside of the tree. So they have to break down that food. They have to have the food, and they have to be able to break it down in order to keep the circulation going, in order to keep whatever water is available to them up into that tree. Okay, so that's what they have to do. And if there isn't food, and there isn't much food, then that slows down the circulation. If there isn't much water, that affects the tree as well. But in photosynthesis, making of the food itself, it's in the formula for photosynthesis. There it is, water, right in that formula. All right. If they don't have the water, then water wasn't available and they didn't make much food. Less food equals reduced circulation of food and fluids, is what we said. And if when the rains came, they may have not been able to use that water, because then by that time they might have had some blockages inside of the tree, because what happens is that plant fluids start to get all gonged up in the xylem and phloem, and then they can't move things around very easy, so they have blocked circulation. And the other thing that can happen, even when the rains came this past year, they came in September, then the trees didn't have a lot of time to make a lot of food before they had to start dropping their leaves in order to get ready for winter, okay, and get whatever food they could out to those buds. So they're kind of running at a little bit of a food deficit there. So, and then they needed food to push out the buds this spring. Okay, so that's the other thing. So you had all these variety of things. You had the drought last year. They had the climate extremes, the temperature extremes during the winter. So you have a succession of extremes, using up more and more food. And now the trees need the food to push out the buds this year. But now they have the moisture. Okay, we've had plenty of moisture this past winter and this spring. And what the trees are saying, well, we want to replenish that food very quickly. Okay. And so what this means is those first set of leaves need to unfurl as soon as possible and work as quickly as possible by using that readily available moisture. And they need to replenish the food that is needed for the trees to survive, become healthy, and kick off the real growth. So the first set of leaves is there to just start to get more food into that tree. Okay. And so this is the positive feedback loop. Make more food to drive more growth drives more food. And that's the positive feedback loop we want to have happen inside of these trees. So this gives you a little more detail about that. Okay. And what the tree is saying, because I have moisture in spring, I'll use whatever food I have to start inner circulation and open as many first generation leaves as possible. Then what they're saying, I'll use whatever food I make in those first generation leaves to replenish my parts and systems with that fuel. Then I'll be able to make more leaf buds into leaves. I'll be able to make more new roots. Okay. Then my second generation leaves will make more food. More roots will uptake more water and nutrients for me to support leaf growth and overall growth. Then more food will keep my circulation system moving and distributing food, water, and nutrients in my whole body. Then I'll grow. I'll make even more leaves and roots. I'll make new tubes, xylem and phloem. More leaves equals more food and better circulation. More roots equals better uptake and of water and nutrients to support leaves. More roots support me longer with food and eventually stores more food. And then you can go on to, then I'll be able to make more leaf buds. So then you have the other loop. Okay. But the first set of leaves are going to be very important in the trees, because they are going to have to replenish the tree, replenish that food supply in the tree. That's what's most important, especially this year after that drought last year. I attended a university conference and they said basically the same thing. They're out looking, testing the roots of trees this year to see how much food, and they honestly believe what's going to happen is that most of the trees will have less food in them, less food stored in the trees because of that drought last year, and that the trees are short on food and they need to replenish that food as quickly as possible. So don't trees already do this? Yes, but some trees are caught up in that negative feedback loop already. Remember, I told you they get stuck sometimes. And then you have the idea of adding more climate extremes. You had this past winter where we had these variable temperatures, from warm to cold. Okay, that uses up a lot of food. They just don't make enough food. They had insufficient foods stored. They went further into debt to unfurl those first generation leaves, and then they have circulation blockages. Okay, so all of these add into that. So then the tree, no, sometimes they can't, but they sure try to, but sometimes they can. And then what happens is that starts what we call the negative feedback loop. But so they need this first generation leaves to make food, avoid pruning this year if possible. Okay, I'm not saying if a tree absolutely has to be pruned, it's a hazard tree or something, do it, but avoid it if at all possible this spring, because a tree just needs to have as many of those leaves as possible. So what happens what if they don't make enough food, is what I said before, is then they get into this negative feedback loop. Not enough food to drive more growth, not enough growth to drive more food. That's what can happen. And then what the possibility is they can get stuck into this. Okay. And the idea is to work with them and get them so they don't go into this, work with that first set of leaves so they can make that food they need to make. And then out of that, and then they can put out that second set of leaves, that real growth leaves, and make more food and really get in a positive feedback loop pattern rather than being stuck in this negative loop pattern. So here's the negative loop. Okay, I don't make enough food. Without enough food, my inner circulation slows, so I can't move what little food I have in fluid to my growing points. I can't make more leaf buds, leaves, tubes, or roots. And if I can't make more new leaves, then I can't make more food in order to grow. So I don't have enough food to survive. And then it goes right back to I don't make enough food. So what happens then? Then you have that negative feedback loop, and that leads to that decline. Okay, trees may lose. Okay, you might not see it this year. Okay, trees lose 10% of their leaves a year or about that. You won't see it till 2 to 4 years down the road. Okay, and then all of a sudden, and then also we have added stresses on there because the climate stresses keep on coming. Drought, hot, extra heat, temperature variations, that keeps coming. So that just adds more stress to the tree. And even if they're green already, most of the trees are already stressed or sick. So it's very easy for them to fall into that negative feedback loop. So can tree or decline be reversed? Can they make enough food? Well, that's that negative feedback loop. Can conventional tree care approaches help, or human health approaches, products, fertilizer, interference with the roots, or you can't do an operation on a tree or put a spin in a tree or give the tree a pill. So really not using these approaches, that's really not going to help a tree. What we need to do is replenish that food inside of that tree. And so the real question is, how can you help them be healthy from the inside out, from their point of view? How can you help the trees replenish their food with that first generation of leaves to restore those feedback loops and fuel new growth? Restore those feedback loops. Initiate that positive feedback loop. Make more food to drive more growth, and then more growth drives more food, and clear any blockages inside of the tree. Amendments are good, but they don't heal the tree's problems from the inside out. I happen to like amendments. They're fantastic, okay? But they work a little bit, it's a little bit too late right now to help the trees that need help right now with food. But long term, I'm a real advocate of amendments, building up the microbial activity in the soil, building up the biology of the soil. I am a real advocate of that because I believe in the long run, that will help trees become less affected by stresses, and they'll be able to stay healthy during different stress conditions, or at least healthier in different stress conditions. All right. So how can you help them be healthy from the inside out, from their point of view? Well, one thing is what we call our consciously based collaborative methods for the plant kingdom to develop a path to healing. Look, the tree has a bioenergy field and you have a bioenergy field. It's possible for those to overlap. The tree has a consciousness and you have a consciousness. That's possible for it to overlap. You know, when you have a dog or a cat or any type of animal, you know, you communicate with them and that's how you do it. Okay. It's either you're in a bioenergy overlap with them or you're in a consciousness overlap with them or both. Okay. And there's no reason. I know a tree doesn't have an eye, ears, nose, or mouth, but you can communicate with the trees also in the same manner, just like you do an animal. Okay. It's in that bioenergy overlap and that consciousness overlap with them. So how can you help them be healthy from the inside out, from their point of view? You collaborate with the tree in bioenergy and in consciousness. Simply understand what's going on inside of the tree. Acknowledge that the tree has needs of its own, not necessarily what you think it needs. Okay. The thing is, we don't know what we don't know. Okay. And that's really it. And use your knowledge of science to ask the trees the right questions. Okay. And you know, you help the tree by offering your focus of attention, intention, and the power of your consciousness. You know, it's kind of like we take a guess sometimes as to what we think a tree needs. And we use this product or that product on the tree without asking the tree really what it needs. Because, you know, using something that slows the growth, for example, of the leaves and puts more growth into the roots may be the opposite of what the tree needs, especially if it needs to grow more leaves. Okay. Or you know, or the other way around. And it's just really important to focus on what that tree needs and then get into that collaborative over you know, bioenergy overlap and consciousness overlap with the tree. And it is collaborative. It's not coming from us. It's not coming because the tree is stuck. It's us working with the energy of that tree, find out what's not operating in that tree and get that back connected and operating again. So next. So, but you think this is crazy. It's impossible. A lot of people do. You think you can. Why? That's the elephant in the room. Okay. That's the elephant in the room. You're arguing for self-imposed limitations. I can't do that. Culturally imposed limitations. Science doesn't support it. And you don't know what you don't know. That's what it's all about. And yeah, it's, you know, it's a little bit different. It's, but I got to tell you, there's people all over the world working on this work right now, doing research on this. Trees have intelligence. They know that. They know about the consciousness of trees. They're looking at all of this. And, you know, it might take years before this comes along and to be fully, you know, you go to your county extension office and they're not going to exactly talk to you about, well, collaborate with the consciousness of the tree. But I got to tell you, it's going to come that way. Okay. Because it's very important to repair that internal functionality of the tree. And to tell you the truth, I changed, you know, and what got me into this was I used to walk soybean fields. I worked in a chemical company for 30 years. And I used to walk soybean fields at 5:30 in the morning with farmers, because what happens is they'd plant their soybeans, would turn off cold and wet, okay, and their soybeans would stop growing. Well, what's the first thing they want to do? They want to blame the herbicide, okay, that was used. That's the first thing they want to do. And it's not. And the soybeans are just sitting there. They're just stuck. They can't grow, okay? The conditions just aren't right for growth. And what the farmer's left doing is waiting for the has to wait for the conditions to turn around and wait for the beans, the soybeans, to grow out of it and begin to grow. And I said there had to be a better way to work with these soybeans in order to get them to grow and work with the internal functionality of them. And that's what got me started on all this. So, and what I find really amazing is how much trees, their internal functionality, that, it gets compromised, it gets blocked. They, as I said, they get stuck. They just can't grow anymore. And they go into a decline cycle. And that can be changed just by simple having a collaborative approach to working with that consciousness or the bioenergy of that tree. So the truth is, you don't know what we really do, what you're capable of. Current culture is changing. Conventional science doesn't have all the answers, but modern new sciences supports our work. There's a book here by Global Shift by Edmund Bourne. Okay. And that'll tell you about, give you some of the way the new sciences support this work. Also, we've put out an 18-page booklet, and you can find it at that website there, BioBaliaInstituteSchool.org. That's our new school. And we have it in there. It's an 18-page booklet which has all the sciences behind our work. And the last piece of information there is the planinitiative.org. And they're kind of in like a clearinghouse for a lot of this research that's being done with trees and plants, concerning the intelligence in trees and plants, concerning the consciousness in trees and plants, this bioenergy overlap, all of those various factors, and working with the internal functionality of the trees and the plants. And that's what they're kind of a central clearinghouse for a lot of the information for that. So you can help communities of trees. When coming from the tree's point of view, one trunk is not a tree. Multiple trunks or community equals a tree. Okay, so one trunk is not a tree coming from the tree's point of view. Why does that matter? When you're thinking you're working with one tree, you have the opportunity to actually work with many trees. How are communities formed? Okay, well, you hear all the science all the time. They talk about the roots of mycorrhizae touching. I buy into that. Okay, but that's the physical part of it all. All right, there's another part of it all. Trees are sharing vibrational songs or signals with each other. That's what they do. Okay, the indigenous people used to dance those songs, but that's how they communicate. All right. And what happens is, as those bioenergy, as the tree becomes healthier, their bioenergy fields expand. And as the bioenergy fields expand, more and more trees start to come into community. Okay. And then that's how they can share this vibration, this energy. And also, as that bioenergy field expands, it also gives them the opportunity. That's where the growth comes into. That's the opportunity for the growth to fill into that bioenergy field. Okay, that's expanding. Okay, and that's how this all works. All right, and so trees, they want to grow, they want to live in community. Okay, and be healthy on the inside. Go ahead. So we've developed a new course, and it's called Reboot Your Trees in Spring, and that's what this is all based on. It's about there's some material in there. It's a short introduction to some of the same information I just gave you here. Okay, it shows some of the trees we worked on to develop this, but then it gives you some guided visualizations to help reboot the trees in spring, help them, that first set of leaves, to help to make food, to help replenish the food inside of the trees. That's what they need, especially in the northeastern United States, where we had all that drought last year. Now, there's other parts of the world that have drought too. Guess what? They have the same problem. Europe had drought. California, the West Coast had to California, Idaho, Utah. All of them had severe drought last year. Okay, they have the same problem. Okay, the trees need to reboot. In other words, they need to use that first set of leaves to get more food, get those leaves pushed out as quickly as possible, make more food for the tree, get the food fed, and then help make new buds and new roots and new vascular tissue, xylem and phloem, so the tree can go on and continue that cycle of more food and more growth. And that's what this is all about. And I always put this in. If you don't want to take the course, I understand. But look, begin to come from the tree's point of view. That's the most important thing. Change your focus of attention a little bit. Shift it to from using the science to find out what's going on for the tree. Use that science to ask the tree the right questions. Focus your intention and attention on what the tree wants, not what you think it wants. And use your science to ask the tree the right questions. All right. So we will announce another new course shortly. And that'll be about, there's a lot of trees that we're finding that are really stuck in this feedback loop of no food, no growth, not enough food, can't grow. So they're caught in that negative feedback loop. So we're going to address that in an additional course, and they're already stuck in that loop, and we're going to address that in an additional course, and we're going to announce that shortly.
And if you would join our mailing list so that you can get invited to that, we'd appreciate it.
And we give thanks to the spirit of life in all beings.
And you can reach us through our websites, or here you can email us. My email is naturepartner@partnerwithnature.org.
And whisper@thetreewhisperer.com.
So we are available for questions.
So I got one for you, Jim.
Go for it.
Your training was as a plant pathologist, correct?
You got it.
How did you stumble on to being able to do this with trees?
So what I started out with, Barry, a guy had Basia invited me to listen to a gentleman talk about a human healing method. Okay. And he was a body talk system.
That's what he created.
That's what he created. And he talked about, how you get the various parts of the body connected. Okay. Using energy work. Same thing, same idea.
Right.
And what you want, you want the heart connected to the lungs, and you want the lungs, connected to the blood. So the blood is circulating the oxygen, and getting the kidneys connected to whatever they need to be connected to, and get all the various parts of the body connected. And that's what he did. And I went in and listened to him. He was doing a seminar in New York. And so I went in to listen to him one night with Basia. And I was actually down in Texas at the time doing some consulting, and I actually flew back, made a special trip back to hear the guy. So I went, and about 45 minutes into his talk, he gave a break. And I walked up to the guy and I said, look, I don't know if your system works for people or not, but I see a great potential for plants. So he says, well, have at it, go to it. Well, so I initially started working on some roses. I had a lot of roses that I did some work on. I had a lot of roses around my house. I started working on those, and I started to see some changes. Then I went to an organic farm, and I started working with them. And they, just like I told you the soybean story, they have the same problem with their crops. Their crops get stuck, okay, and they lose time. And time is valuable because if you get early frost at the end of the season, then you don't have a big crop. So they were interested, and I helped them with their crops, get their crops out, get them growing, get them moving along. And then decided, trees are, they're around for more than a year. They're not annuals. Okay. And I just got attracted to trees and what they needed. And I got attracted to what, to really helping these trees out. Because really, that's the big thing. They're not an annual. They don't just grow and put out a fruit and then go on their merry way. trees are here, and we need trees, and we need them to be healthy. And that's what got me really started on it. And I see the opportunity, and the more and more I see it, the more and more I do it, the more and more I get involved in it. Trees, there's something to learn. I'll tell you, every time I'm out in the field and I work on trees, I learn something new. Okay. And how they operate, how they connect, how they work together, what they're trying to do. And they're amazing. They are just really very amazing. So anyway, that's how I got started.
Well, Jim isn't going to toot his own horn, so I'll have to do it for him. So the story he's sometimes a little reluctant to tell is that when he says he changed, he really did, because that moment that he approached that speaker about the human health system, that was a good 20 years ago. He was of the opinion that at the time, organics was just starting in the world and in agriculture, and he was of the opinion, oh well, that's just, you can't use that, you can't do that. And so he really made a 180 or more because he went from this sort of it can't be done and I can't do it attitude to now being called the tree whisperer. So he had to really examine what his own self limitations were, how he was stopping himself, and what could really be possible for him. And I believe if he can do it, anybody can do it, can really make that growth step to being more aware of that the spirit really in trees and plants.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I just think back to our ancestors. They were certainly much more in tune with the energy in plants and animals and everything. And unfortunately, most of our society has lost that. But you guys are lighting the way to get back to it.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
Ellen has her hand up. I think she has a question. Ellen, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi there, Dr. Jim and Basia. I was actually at a course that you guys gave, two of them. One was at NOFA, Mass, and one was at a place in New York. You go for a week. In Rhinebeck.
Omega.
This is going back a really long time. I'm going to say
Yeah.
years.
Oh yeah.
Anyways, whenever I'm talking about what you guys do, and I don't do it too much, but I always kind of use that. He was a PhD plant pathology, and he's doing this. So you've got that street cred of the having that science background, and then you're doing this. That all said, I don't know if you can see this tree right out here. It's a maple, the one that's kind of where this one is. Can you see that? How she's leaning?
Yeah, I can see something there. Yeah.
Ah, she's really in a place of quite distress and has been splitting from inside. And I'm just kind of wondering, every once in a while I go and just put my hand on and do kind of the rudimentary, first few steps. But I'm just wondering if you can feel what she's going through, and does she want out, or does she kind of want still here? And what can I do to help her out a little bit?
You be my partner and I'll continue to grow. You be my partner and I'll continue to grow. I want to grow. I want to grow.
You can
She
see
doesn't
it.
want out. Definitely doesn't want out.
Thank you. You can see it makes me super emotional.
Yeah. You be my partner and you stay with my partner and I'll stay with you. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll grow. All right.
I will go back and go through the steps. I live in a neighborhood where unfortunately a lot of people cut down a lot of trees for no reason, really healthy trees. They use a lot of chemicals, and it's so sad to watch. And then they don't spend any time outside. And you're just kind of like, well, like if you're so afraid of nature, maybe stay inside, let the trees do their own thing. But you know, I would love to bring your ideas to people, you know, bring you guys to more people. I'm in near Boston. And I just think that the work that you guys do is so beautiful, and it's so like now, like people like Suzanne Samar and all these other people, you know, the mycorrhizae, they were all talking about this stuff. They probably were back then too, but now all of these ideas are out, and I'm just really grateful. So thank you.
Thank you. Keep talking to your tree about clearing the blockages in the trunk.
Thank you.
Okay. Keep talking about getting those increase the circulation, clear the blockages in the trunk. Got plenty of food. Trees got plenty of food. Needs to clear. There's got a lot of blockages, especially in the trunk. So
My
keep
feeling-
talking about that.
There's a walkway nearby that, you know, I can't just pick up because I'm not very strong, but, you know, I'd like her to be able to. Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep working with her. All right. And
Yeah.
keep talking to her about about clearing those blockages in that trunk. All right. All right. You'll make it. You stay its partner. And you got my email address if I can help you out.
Yeah, I was
Okay.
gonna reach out to you guys. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Anyone else?
Sometimes people need a little encouragement
Encouragement.
to ask their question or share something about their own experience with trees.
I talk to trees all the time.
Yeah, I know you do. I know you do.
Put you on the
That's
spot.
but
We-
So,
and know how close you are to your trees.
and I love that you have you've built up your soil beautifully. And that is really going to help your trees out with these climate extremes, be less susceptible to climate extremes. It's really going to help you out a lot, building up the microbial activity in the soil. And yeah.
so,
I'm
Mel has a
amazed
question.
when I drive around here and I, you know, see the excavation and the soil is just sandy. Like stick a shovel down into my ground and it's black and beautiful, and earthworms are like crazy.
Mm.
Looks
The
like
trees
Mel has
appreciate
a
it.
question for you. Mel, do you have a
Who
question?
does?
yes. So, okay. I'm not going to tell you about where I'm living now because it's just a nightmare, but I'm moving to the Rachel Carson Eco Village, which is going to be just north of Pittsburgh. And I am in charge of the tree planting ceremony that we're going to do just before we break ground. And I had no idea that this webinar was going to be about this kind of thing. And it just thrills me no end. So, thinking
Great.
about planting a new tree. It's going to be a white oak tree. What can we do as a group to help this tree get started and live well?
Well, I'll tell you what. You can, the gentleman sitting right there, Barry, has got more amendments and then you can shake a stick at, and he can tell you what amendments to put in the soil and help amend that soil to help those trees, because that's what you need to do. Use
In
some
a practical sense.
practical sense. Help amend that soil, get the soil, build up the organic matter in the soil. I'll just tell you a few things that I use. I use leaf compost. I use worm castings, and I use dehydrated chicken poop. Okay. And that's what I use when I'm transplanting trees. Okay. And I've had real good success. Now Barry's got some other products that really work real good, and highly recommend anything he's got, because he's, you know, top notch with what products to use and how to use them and like that. So, you know, amend that soil. That's what I'd say. Barry, you got any comments for the lady?
Well, first of all, thank you for that. You know, I'm going to tell a short story that what actually changed my life. You know, I've been in landscaping since the 80s, and you know, I managed the pesticide and fertilizer division of a huge company, just spraying all kinds of things out there. And I happened to stumble on somebody who was selling worm castings by the ton. And then I found out he was making compost teas with it. And I said, this is crazy. But I followed it, and I ended up buying that company, which became Terra. And it just completely changed my whole life. I did study a bit under Elaine Ingham and some of the other people with Soil Food Web. So, that's just a little history of me. But yeah, we have a lot of products that can certainly help trees and all kinds of things.
But I'd like to add something to the soft side of Mel's question. So you're going to be bringing in this new being to live in this new place. I assume that, Mel, you're going to be buying a tree that's maybe 6 or 8 feet tall. Yes, are we on track there, Mel?
Mel, you're
Did she
muted.
go?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm blind, so I'm using voiceover on my phone. So can you hear me now?
Oh,
Yeah, we can
yes.
hear you.
Okay, cool. I'm not in charge of buying the tree, of getting the tree. It's not going to be 6 or 8 feet tall. It's going to be smaller than that.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Even so, it doesn't, I guess what the point I'm trying to make is that it's not already growing in the spot that you intend for it. So you're going to be bringing this into a new piece of land. So of course you want to do all the appropriate stuff these guys have been talking about, but you also want to honor the intelligence of the tree and
Yes.
ask it questions. You want to ask it things like, is this just the right spot? Or should you be 10 feet this way or 2 feet that way? And should we turn you a certain way? So you want to honor the intelligence, because when you ask a tree something like, well, is this a good spot, or should we put you just over there? Well, it may be in communion with the land, and the land might say, hey, there is a rock shelf 10 feet underneath this spot.
Right.
And so you're never going to be able to send roots down deep there. The land knows, the trees and nature's intelligence knows. So we need to do things like ask, is this the right place? And another question could be, do you need buddies? Do you need
Yes.
another white oak or 3 or 4 white oaks in this vicinity so that you can build community? So that's another partially practical and partially spiritual approach to doing something like planting a tree, and especially dedicating it for a certain purpose in this community that you're creating. And then, of course, then there's the even little bit more spiritual aspect where you may be able to commune a little bit more deeply with that spirit of oak, that spirit of white oak, and not only find out about its health, this particular one, but find out about its purpose there, and explain that perhaps you will ask it to have a purpose on behalf of the humans in this location. So there's an awful lot more that you can do, especially with a purposeful tree planting. So have I answered your question a little more?
Yes, you gave me some great ideas. You know, I'm not in charge of the practical tree part. You know, picking the tree and picking the, you know, all of that stuff, but I am in charge of the spiritual aspect, and I love asking asking the questions. Um, and I would adore it if we were planting more than one tree in that spot. There's going to be a lot of trees all around because that's part of what we're doing at the Rachel Carson Eco Village is connecting the forest back um, to
We'd love to find out more about it. Sounds like it's right
Look-
up our alley.
look it up, rachelcarsonecovillage.org. It's going to be fabulous. So
If I could add something to what Basia was saying, Basia kept mentioning white oak. And if this is the right place for white oak as it grows will attract probably the widest variety of insects and birds and animals than any other tree.
that was one of the reasons we want it there. That was one of the reasons we picked it. So yeah, I'm excited about what you guys are doing. I really appreciate this webinar. It's quite a surprise. So I landed in the
Great.
right spot. Thank you.
Great,
Great.
great.
Ellen
Well,
had
stay in
another
touch with
comment.
us.
Ellen had another comment in the chat. She said she would also imagine it helps where you get the tree. There are nurseries that focus on organic or even permaculture and well-amended soil. Then there are really commercial nurseries that use pesticides, especially neonics. You want to go with the former. I like Elmore
Yeah.
roots in Vermont, though there are other folks closer to you in Pennsylvania. So I think the comment was for Mel as well as everybody
Yeah,
else.
that's a good point. And also you have to be aware of nurseries because a lot of them, they plant them too deep and the root collar gets covered over.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say that one
Right.
too, yeah.
And some people don't remove the cage and they don't remove the burlap. So those
Yeah,
are
that's-
points that can.
There's a point, Mel. You might just get that. There's a practical point there. Get the burlap or the cage off the trees. Make sure they're not planting them with that. And
We're
make sure
working.
there's
We're
Yeah,
working with some excellent people in Pittsburgh that I think they know all this stuff. So I'm
Good.
hoping
okay.
that
The
they're
other one is, like Barry said, is get a lot of times underneath that burlap or they'll throw soil over the top of the roots. Get that soil off the top of those roots before you plant that tree. Okay.
Don't plant it too deep.
And then don't plant it plant it right. So that the top of those roots are right at the top of the soil surface. You don't want to bury those roots. So you want
Okay.
to push whatever soil is underneath, get that burlap off, take whatever soil is on top of the roots, get it off, and then plant the tree right at the top of those, even with the
Yeah,
top of those.
you'll see the trunk coming down, then it flares out. You want to have that
Yes.
flare exposed.
yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Beautiful. Thank
Email, very key. And like Basia said, ask them where they want to live. That's
Yeah.
really a key. I've done that and I've had very good success with helping people who move older trees. Okay. A real good success with that. Okay. Because the trees will move and they're very happy to move, but they want to be moved to a certain place and like that. So
Yeah.
it really helps. Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So what I'd like to do is bring this talk back around to this time of year. As we've been, we live in New Jersey, so the leaves aren't quite out yet. They're just starting out in New Jersey. And as we've been, as we said, driving the Blue Ridge Parkway the last week and being in West Virginia now, these are all places at some altitude. So again, most of the leaves aren't quite out yet. And this is the perfect time. This is the time that Jim came to me so passionately about just what, 2 weeks ago or so, and we were so grateful that Barry could slip us in at this point in time, because this is the time that there's an opportunity. The trees have a real opportunity right now to get that first set of leaves out. And we normally think of that as growth. Oh, the tree's starting to grow. It's spring, it's starting to grow. Well, Jim and I have a little more specific definition of what that really means. What we're saying now is that the first set of leaves aren't really there for what you usually think of as growth. What they're there for is to make that food so that the part systems and functions of the tree can be replenished. So it would be like if you or I had been on a fast for a while. Well, the first food that we would want to eat wouldn't probably be to sit down to a big steak dinner, if any of us do that anymore. I don't know, but it would be to have something that would just sort of replenish us initially. And then, so back to the trees now. So once the trees then get those part systems and functions replenished, then they can start this cycle that Jim was talking about, this positive cycle, to then make enough food so they grow, and grow enough food so that they can grow enough so that they can make more food. So that's the opportunity that they have right now. And that is, if you don't mind me, a little preview of coming attractions, that's what we're going to address in this little meditation, guided visualization exercise that I'd like to offer to you. It's optional. If you don't want to stay on, you don't have to. But Barry said we could add this on as an option here at the end of the talk. So, so there you go.
So let me ask you this. It's been cool here. You're not in Jersey now. So you might not know it. All of a sudden now the temperatures are up in the mid 80s for
Oh my
several
gosh.
days. Yeah, and the leaves are just going boom. So
Oh boy.
yeah, I'm wondering what you think about that.
Well, again, those first leaves are to replenish that food in that tree. That's what needs to happen. That's what they need to do. Okay. Get the food back into those trees. Okay. And that's what they need to do. And then once that food gets replenished inside of the tree, then the tree can begin to, as Basia said, get those part systems and functions, get them back connected again and get them operating in sync again. And then what can happen is that will also feed the roots and the buds to start what is real growth. Okay, the first leaves out, I don't like those should replenish. The next set of leaves start some real growth. That's what we're kind of saying.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And
I guess the thing I was getting at, do you think that this new flush growth, which is, I don't want to say abnormal, but it's more than you usually see all at once at this time of year. You think that's good, bad, different?
It's probably okay. It's probably as good as can be. I think it's okay. I think it's now that you're telling me that, I'd say probably pretty good, because it's going to help replenish that food pretty fast. That's what the tree's probably trying to do. They're probably, that consciousness knows they're short on food.
Yeah.
And I'm betting, I bet that's what's going on. And like I said, I'm down here. I got to tell you, the trees down here haven't popped. So it's kind of interesting when you tell me they popped up there. I'll have to see when I get back.
Yeah.
But what I'm kind of guessing is that that's the consciousness saying, hey, the weather is good. We got to get these leaves out. Okay, so we can make some food for ourselves. We got to get this food going, because they are short on food.
I frankly, I think they're doing exactly
What we're telling them. Yeah.
what they wanted to do.
What they wanted to
Yeah,
do.
what you talked over with them and what,
Right,
yeah,
right.
it sounds like, whoa, they're just ready to.
They want to go. They
Yeah.
want to get it out. They want to get
Okay.
those leaves out to replenish that food. Yeah.
Okay, well, good. So let's move on to the next step.
Okay, so, okay, well, I also remember that, Barry, you asked me to have a slide, which I want to share while people are still here.
Thank you. Yeah, so that slide is there when you go to our website, and you know, we do market a lot of products, and but we're proud of the products that we offer. So if you if you go in there and go to order something, you enter this code 325, and you will get a discount. And that's only in effect up until the 19th. So it's an incentive to visit our website, see the things we have to offer and how we can help the trees and turf and everything else. And it's just a sign of our appreciation for your being here.
Thanks, Barry. It looks like Ellen has her hand up. She's got another question.
Okay, okay, has everybody got this code written down now? So I can stop sharing. Everybody write it down. TerraEnvironmental.com, and the coupon code is TREE25.
And we are recording this, so you can go to the website at any time and watch not only this webinar, but the other ones we've had in the past.
Great.
Great.
Ellen, do you have a question?
Well, I was just gonna mention that when we were talking about the white oak, just to look at some white oak medicine, you know, because it's so beautiful, and you know, the whole world of like flower essences and Bach flower remedies. That just kind of came to me when you guys were talking about that. So I just wanted to put that out
Sure,
there.
sure. Everything that spirit of the white oak represents to humans. But you also have to ask the white oak what it is for itself. Great, great, great. Love it. Yes, that the Native American medicine aspect is very important. Okay, so shall we move on with our guided visualization?
Yeah.
Very okay. All right. If you don't mind me pulling this over a little bit, I have to open up my my little script here. Okay, so this is going to take about 12 minutes. So I hope you all can stay. So I'd like to lead you in a short process of conscious collaboration with the tree. I'll guide you to help the tree become healthy from the inside out. And what this means is that you'll use your focus of attention and intention in a directed way. And I ask you to please do it without bias from your education or your previous experience with trees. So please temporarily set aside whatever you think is right and let yourself play along with my metaphor. Now, again, this visualization will be paralleling just what Jim has been talking about, these 4 inner things that need to happen: the replenishing food, making more food, growing, and clearing blockages in circulation. So I hope that you will be amused by my metaphor. In this, you'll imagine that you are driving a freight train. Yes, you'll be the engineer of a steam engine pulling flatbed cars that will be loaded and unloaded with canisters marked with the words water, nutrients, and food. So the locomotive of your train, remember, this is kind of an old style. It has what they call a cow catcher, which is this V-shaped kind of fender. It's something like a snowplow, and it pushes things out of the train's path. So please understand that my metaphor is not precisely accurate, but by following it, you'll get a good idea of what it's like to be inside of a tree and generally how a tree operates on the inside. So to get started, please sit comfortably, and you may close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. If at any time you are uncomfortable in any way, simply stop doing the exercise. So please take a deep breath and think of a tree that you like. It doesn't matter where it is or what kind it is. Just begin to imagine or feel as if you are with that tree. See its structure now in early spring. If it's deciduous, it may not have leaves, or it may already. If it's evergreen, it's just coming out of its winter stage. Take a deep breath. And now imagine that you are the engineer of a steam freight train. And that train has 3 or 4 flatbed cars behind the engine. And you're sitting in the engineer's seat. Go ahead. Pull that rope that blows the train whistle. Imagine that you and your freight train now shrink down to the size of the head of a pin or even smaller. And you find yourself and the freight train inside of the roots of your tree. The train's workers are loading canisters onto those flatbed cars. The canisters are marked water and stored food. You toss a couple of the canisters marked stored food into the burner of the locomotive because running the engine does take fuel. When the flatbed cars are full of canisters, you ease the engine out of the station marked routes and head into a tube marked up the trunk. As you drive the train up the up tube, up the trunk, that path is not clear. There are blockages in the way that your engine's cow catcher has to push away. So it's a little slow going. But eventually, you go up the trunk and reach another tube marked branches. You take that tube, continue up that tube. Every now and then, you have to throw a canister marked stored food into the boiler because running the engine takes fuel. And the cow catcher is still pushing aside blockages in this tube. Eventually, you stop at a station marked Leaf Bud. There's a gate next to the platform. If that gate is closed, open it. You and the train's workers offload many canisters marked water and stored food. Leave the gate open. Then drive the train to the next station marked Leaf Bud. Do some more offloading. And continue to drive to more stations. Eventually, all of the canisters are offloaded. The train reaches a point where it can turn around, and there you wait, and the sun shines. The leaf buds are using that water and food that you dropped off. And soon the leaf buds unfurl as leaves and begin to make new food through the process called photosynthesis. The food is actually a complex carbohydrate, but we'll just call it food. Now you rev up the engine and enter a tunnel called down tube. You stop the train at the first station marked leaf and begin to load canisters marked food onto your freight cars. Leave the gate open. Continue in the down tube to more leaf station platforms, loading up canisters marked food. As you go, the cow catcher is still pushing away some blockages, and occasionally you have to throw a food canister into the engine's burner. And then you come to a switch. You leave that tube and drive the train up another up tube, dropping off canisters of food into leaf buds that are just forming. When the canisters are all offloaded, you turn the train around and stop at more leaf stations, picking up more food until the freight cars are full, overflowing with canisters marked food. With a full load, you head down the big down tube with other freight trains in front of you and behind you. The cow catcher is still pushing away some blockages, but there are less of them. And as you go, you see that the down tube needs rebuilding. You spill some food out of food canisters into the walls of the tube as you go. This food will also help the tree grow a new tube for the current year. Then you pull the train into a tube marked roots. Here, you spill out some more food so that more roots can grow. And you travel all the way to the end of the tube. At this point, you've offloaded most of the rest of the canisters. You turn the train around and pick up a full load of new canisters marked water and nutrients. And you're ready to start your trip again up the up tube. Well, we want to point out here that there's a constant cycle of distribution of food and clearing circulation tubes that is your train's job. So it goes like this. First, taking food and nutrients up to leaf buds and leaves, clearing blockages. Then picking up food made in the leaves, dropping off that food all around the tree structure into new leaves and for growing new tubes. Then picking up more food that the leaves are making, and then taking the big down tube all the way down the trunk, always clearing blockages along the way, going into the roots, where you drop off most of the food so new roots can grow and the roots can store that food. and finally picking up water and nutrients again. So you see, it's a constant cycle of distributing food and fluids all around the tree. But now I'd like to ask you to take a deep breath and put your freight train on autopilot. Let it go on its next trip on its own. Take a deep breath and imagine that you, or actually your consciousness, is expanding in size and filling the tree's whole structure. Expanding and expanding till you're the size of the tree. You're being the tree. Imagine that you can feel or sense the orchestrated and balanced movement of millions of tiny freight trains inside that tree. The tree is operating in a positive feedback loop of making more food than growing, growing than making more food, all the while with good, clear circulation tubes. And now imagine that the whole tree begins to glow like the sun. Its bioenergy field is expanding. And that bioenergy field overlaps with the bioenergy field of nearby trees, so that all of the trees are operating together. They are sharing food, fluid, and information with each other. So they're no longer just a bunch of trees. They're forming a strong, cohesive community. And in their well-connected community, each tree has a reliable and constant source of food. Each and all the trees together are healthier. All trees are making enough food to keep their circulation systems running, to grow, and to withstand the various kinds of climate extremes that come their way. So take a final moment to really enjoy this feeling of robust health and growth in your tree. Take a deep breath, and in your heart, say thank you to your tree for allowing you inside of its world. Stretch your back and shoulders. Breathe deeply. Open your eyes and return to normal human conscious awareness. If anyone wants to share something about that experience, we're all ears.
I just feel very comfortable.
It's great.
Thank you. No, okay. It's been a long day
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I enjoyed
Barry,
every
thank you for having us on. We
Oh,
really
sure.
appreciate it very, very much. We know you changed the schedule for us. We appreciate it because we wanted to get this message out about
Yep.
rebooting the trees in spring. And we
Mhm.
really appreciate it because they need to have that food to replenish that food in their systems and to get this, to get a good cycle of growing of more food, more growth, you know. And we really appreciate it very, very much in
Thank you.
putting this on. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys. Like I said before, the work you do is amazing and much needed. And I'm just glad to be friends with you and that we can work together. So
And we feel the same
We
way.
feel the same way.
Glad to be friends with you and work together.
Thank
You
you.
got it.
all right.
Thank you so much for all of the attendees.
10 days for being on. I noticed everybody stayed on for the Basha's meditation. We appreciate
you.
that.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you all.
And stay in touch with all of us.
Yeah.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you, and Basha. Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you all.